I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Debbie, here with Star Trek Discovery star Wilson Cruz. Wilson, Star Trek Discovery wraps 5 seasons in a couple of weeks' time on air, I suppose. And I, for one, am not quite ready to say goodbye. How do you feel about saying goodbye to the show after all this time?
First of all, I still say air too. I feel like
Good.
it ages
Well,
us, and I catch
yeah,
myself every time.
yeah.
How do I feel about it? Well, I think if this was, I mean, I've said this before, if this was the season that we had to go out on, uh, we're going out on a high note. It's a great season. Um, we had a lot of fun making it. These people are in my heart forever. And so I don't want to start crying at the beginning of the interview because that's too much. But the camaraderie and the bond with these actors has been life altering, really. And so that part is really heartbreaking. So it's bittersweet that it's over. But we say this all the time. It's Star Trek. You never know what's going to happen. And this season has been so well received, both by the viewers and by the critics. And so you never know. You never know where you'll see us again.
I like that. Let's keep that going because
It's Star Trek.
without
Keep hope alive.
it's that keep hope alive, man. Totally. This season has really impressed me, and I've been a fan from the get-go. I really loved season three with the whole Emerald Chain Osira storyline, Janet Kidder. But this season has
Yeah.
been blowing me away. And full disclosure, I have seen the whole thing, but we will not talk about the finale, or I will get a knock on the door from CBS and Paramount Plus, and we don't want that.
You and me both.
We don't want that. They're scary. No, I'm kidding. So look, this final season's been a satisfying cat and mouse chase around the galaxy, hunting for clues. It's such an audacious concept to bring back the progenitors, and it made me think about how the progenitors wanted to create a diversity of beings in the galaxy because they're alone, and they aspired to that. And it ultimately shows us that we're all connected. And what a perfect legacy for this show to leave on the whole franchise and pop culture in general, don't you think?
I do. And that episode from Next Gen is one of my favorites. I actually remember when it
Yeah,
first
me too.
aired, because it actually did air, when it first aired in the 90s, because I was a big Next Gen fan. And so when Michelle and Alex were talking to us about this season before we started it, I was really excited because this series has always attempted to ask the big questions. That it's a big show. It has big stakes. Always had big stakes. But this is the biggest of all, right? Like the question that you know humanity has been asking since its inception. Why are we here? How did we get here? Some people believe we don't need to know, but many of us believe, as scientists, that is at the core of what science is, to answer all of those burning questions. And so it also allows this crew to go on an adventure that is connected to that big question. But in terms of Hugh Culber, who is someone who has um, been asking big questions since season one of life and death and its meaning, it allows him to go deeper and perhaps even put a button on those questions and complete his. I feel like, I feel anyway, that it completes his arc of self-discovery, of self-definition. Um, and um, and so it was a great opportunity to ask those big questions. And I think it's a beautiful ending. I don't want to go into it, like we said, but I think the way that the season ends and so the series ends, um, is so beautiful and so satisfying, um, that one would think we planned it, but we didn't.
Yeah, it blows my mind because I just figured, oh, they must have done a bunch of reshoots to
Yeah,
make all of this
no,
happen. It's so perfect. It's a beautiful ending and it's perfect for the show. You've said in the past that Star Trek Discovery is American mythology. To me, it's such an aspirational term. The show is aspirational. The cast is it's so diverse racially, ethnically, gender identity, and it is something that I think society and other TV shows maybe might want to aspire to. What do you think about that still?
I think that Star Trek, its lore, it's the definition of Star Trek. The motto is infinite diversity and infinite combinations. And we've heard that from Mr. Roddenberry himself. And I feel like this version of Star Trek really embraced that idea and took it to another level. Um, and I hope, like you say, that we've modeled for other series, for the industry in general, as to how successful a series, how a piece of art could be when you attempt to use the people that live in the world, right? It's a little shocking to people at first, mainly because it's giving you something we should have always been seeing, and it takes a minute. I mean, I think about like, uh, you know, I go back and sometimes get on Criterion Collection and see some movies from the 1930s, and I'm like, wow, there are no people of color on here. And that to me is shocking, right? Like, then a maid walks in and you're like, oh, okay, so she gets to be a maid. So I think in the reverse of that, it can be a little shocking for people to see so much diversity on a show. But it's it's really about these people and their relationships and their individual journeys of discovery. And that's no accident, right? When we first started this series, um, our our showrunners and everyone involved were telling us that there was a purpose to calling it discovery, that it was a discovery of the universe, of course, and of science, but it was also going inward, who we are to ourselves, who we are to each other. Um, and what a great opportunity to have a diverse cast, like you said, racially, gender, so much, so many women, leading this crew. Um, but also in terms of sexuality, which is, an opportunity for this series to reflect its time the way so many Star Trek series have reflected theirs. And you see every one of these people go on their own journey of discovery. And what it says to me, and I hope what it says to others, is that no matter how different we are, and my character gets to say this, he actually said it in last week's episode, no matter how different we are, we have so much more in common. Each of us, every single one of us, is on a journey of self-discovery, of figuring out who we are, what our place is, who our people are. And I think the series does a beautiful job of showing that commonality. No matter your gender, no matter your sexuality, no matter your race, no matter your species, if you will.
Yeah. That's right. That brings me so much comfort. I think that's one of the reasons why this show has always really resonated with me. And it's not a kumbaya, let's all sing together and aren't we all amazing. It can be uncomfortable and it can be fascinating and interesting and unusual. And that's what I really, really appreciate about this show. And this show has never shied away from prominently featuring queer characters and stories that broke barriers. And here you are again. You've already broken barriers. It's not your first rodeo where you've portrayed an
Mm.
openly gay character like on as Ricky Vasquez. Geez, I grew up watching that show as well. But we need to talk about your contribution to bringing LGBTQIA stories to the Star Trek universe. It's a big one. I think Gene Roddenberry will be very proud of this show and we're very proud of you as well.
Well, that means a great deal to me. Thank you. That's very generous. We're part of the world, and have been having a conversation with the world, this country, and the culture about letting go of the shame that we were forced to take on. And we've arrived at a moment in our history as a movement, as a community, where we understand that the way forward is sharing our stories, sharing our lives, so that people can understand that we have so much more in common, not to repeat myself, than we don't. And so television, film, but Star Trek specifically is an opportunity to have that conversation. We did it with race in the original series. We've carried on that tradition throughout every series that has come forward. And so this was an opportunity, because we've been having this conversation culturally, for Star Trek to reflect our time. And it was important to me that this relationship with Anthony Rapp felt real and felt grounded and felt loving, but also felt like a marriage, like a real marriage, like people who knew each other, who could be irritated by each other, but still be in love with each other, who could be in awe of each other, but still understand that we're human and love each other for that, who take risks and take on charges, young people in their chosen family, to expand their lives in that way. You know, I don't remember, I don't know, I can't say that I know exactly what they had in mind when they planned Hugh Culber, but I know that I advocated for him, as I have advocated for characters throughout my career, whether it was Ricky Vasquez or, you know, Jack Sosa in The West Wing, or, you know, Victor in Party of Five. I feel like I am the guardian of these characters, and it's my job as the actor to give them a voice and give them an opportunity to be seen. And, you know, Winnie Holzman modeled that relationship between the actor and the writer and the showrunner, that this should be a collaborative experience. And, you know, it's a little risky for an actor to impose sometimes, but I think it's the way, you know, that you approach that conversation with respect, and humility, that allows you as the actor to advocate for them. And so I felt very strongly that this character, that this relationship, that all of these characters, LGBTQ characters, should be prominently displayed. And luckily, I was working with people who were receptive to that idea and were excited about it. So it's just part of who I am, and it's part of my view of the world, that queer people are in the world. And this is a great way for us to communicate to the larger culture of who we really are, what our lives are really like, so that we can have more understanding.
Yeah, you know, I almost don't even really want to ask about it because it's just become such second nature to have all different types of people and groups represented on TV that I welcome into my living room every week. But it's important that we talk about it just so that we can
Yeah,
raise awareness and also give kudos to the creative team and the studio behind the show, that they're willing to put their neck out and really actually put their money where their mouth is. I find that so interesting, and
absolutely.
so
And I
welcome.
think science fiction gives us an opportunity to have that conversation without hitting you over the head with it
Yeah,
too, right?
yeah,
So it was a great opportunity, and I'm glad we took it.
it is. Now, Dr. Hugh is often can be quite measured and stoic and honorable. He's also deeply sensitive and empathetic. And there's always been this beautiful sincerity with the way that you've portrayed him. Then you get episode 3, Janelle, where the crew was on Trill, and the showrunners, both of them, and the writing team gave you this gift where you get to take on Janelle's consciousness, and you really nailed it. And it looked like you were having a ball. Talk me through that.
Um, I'm glad that you called it a gift, because I didn't feel like it was a gift right away. I felt like it was a real challenge, because they gave me, you know, free reign as to creating who this person was in terms of how I embodied him, which was a blessing and a curse, because I need parameters, man. I need some boundaries to work within. And
Wow.
they were like, no, whatever you want, whoever you want this to be. And so I tried a version of it in the read through at the table read. I tried a version at home by myself. You know, none of it quite worked. And I had like a week and a half, I think maybe 2 weeks, to like come up with it. And while we were still shooting the first two episodes. So those who know me know that I was a neurotic, anxious mess for about a week and a half, including my cast members who got tired of me, you know, spinning about it. And I ended up using David Ajala's acting coach, just so that I could like have a set of eyes to work with, right? Because usually, you know, I take some time, I develop the character, I have weeks, maybe a month.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I didn't want to spoil the initial reaction from my other actors because I knew that the first scene that we were going to shoot was the reveal of Janal. And so I wanted an authentic response from David Ajala and Sonequa Martin Green, Blue Del Barrio, and everyone in that scene. So we worked on it a bit, and he made me feel like, okay, I know where I'm going. I know what I'm doing. And we do the scene, and I'll never forget looking at Sonequa and David Ajala's faces and understanding in the moment that I nailed it because they could not have looked at me more strangely if I had asked them to. And so then I felt a real sense of relief. The hardest part, honestly, because I love those two people and those actors so much, was not breaking in the moment because I was like, I cannot spoil this because I, you know, Wilson wanted to laugh so hard.
Yeah.
But what I loved about him, what I loved about Janal, was the fact that I realized here was this person who had been out of the physical world for 800 years. And while he understood that he had a mission and a goal that he had to fulfill, he was so in love with the world and its elements and the universe and being back in it and having a body that would allow him to enjoy it. And so when he says this guy really works out, for me, it was like, oh, I'm going to get to like jump and, you know, run and, you know, do all of the things physically that I haven't been able to do for 800 years. And so, you know, there was also this kind of mystery about him. Was he on their side? Was he not on their side?
Yeah.
And he loved playing with that, you know, keeping them on their toes a bit. It was a blast once I got over that first initial hump, that first scene. And as an actor, you dream for those opportunities, right? Of like, not chewing the furniture, but, you know, going big, right? When your team says, go big, and you're allowed to do it and it works and it's not too much, and it works within the story, there's not much more that's more fun than that for an actor.
Yeah, and at this stage in your career, after all these years, to still feel slightly self-conscious and you know, unsure, and then to just break through it and go for it, and then have it land,
Well,
that's
it's
something.
as my therapist has now helped me come to terms with, after 30 years as a professional actor, this is my process. So I have to
That's right.
like break myself down in order to get to the meat of it and build myself up and go in. Almost as if I'm proving something to myself every single time that I can do this. You know, I've talked about this. You know, I started as a kid. I was a
Yeah.
basically a child actor. So I learned on the job. You know, I came from the theater, but you know, I was 19 when I got my first gig, and acting in the theater and acting on television in a series and creating an arc is very different. And so the fact that I had the masters of television as my first professors, Marshall Herskovitz and Ed Zwick and Winnie Holzman,
Mhm.
to like teach me the ropes, um, really set me on the right course. But I didn't have, I don't have a degree. I don't have a BFA. I didn't go to Juilliard. I didn't do any of that. My school was the sets of Hollywood, the sound stages that I was allowed to work on. Um, and I just was a sponge. And so there's a part of me every time that still feels like I'm proving to myself that I know what I'm doing. And I have to say, working with Anthony Rapp, who also was a child actor and
Yeah.
started young, um, working with him has given me the confidence because of his support, because of the way that we work together, that I was like, oh, okay, now I'm 50. I've gotten to a point where I'm kind of like, okay, yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
I've been doing pretty good.
I can do this. I think I got this.
But
Um,
Janal was a big part of it, I have to say.
it sure was. It's been such an amazing journey, this ride, this Star Trek Discovery ride, that I've really enjoyed it. And the final season's wonderful, and you were great in it. Thank you so much for your insight today, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, I appreciate it.